Number 1. Spartans. You are a Persian immortal, elite guard of Xerxes, advancing through the hot gates in 480 BC. The pass is narrow, barely wide enough for 50 men abreast. Ahead, a wall of bronze shields reflects the August sun. The smell of blood is overwhelming. Bodies are stacked 3 deep, your brothers, men who advanced this morning. The line has not moved. For 2 days, the line has not moved. The year is 480 BC. The location is Thermopylae, a mountain pass in central Greece. Herodotus, writing in his histories around 440 BC, documents what happened there. 300 Spartan hoplites, supported by approximately 700 Thespians and 400 Bebans, held a Persian force estimated between 100,000 and 150,000 men for 3 days. Modern historians, including Paul Cartledge in The Spartans, published in 2002, consider these numbers broadly accurate, though Herodotus's Persian count may be inflated. The ratio remains extraordinary. The mainstream explanation is straightforward. The terrain created a bottleneck. The Spartan phalanx 8 men deep, overlapping bronze shields, spears projecting forward was ideally suited for the narrow pass. Superior armor and training allowed the Greeks to hold against numerical superiority. These are not foolish arguments. The terrain advantage was real. The phalanx was effective, but other Greek city-states fielded phalanxes. Athens had hoplites. Thebes had hoplites. Corinth, Argos, Megara had bronze armor, all had spear formations, all had access to the same terrain advantages in their own territories. None achieved this ratio. The Spartan training system, the agoge, is documented in multiple sources. Plutarch's Life of Lycurgus, written around 100 AD, describes boys taken from their families at age 7. 13 years of systematic conditioning followed. Xenophon, writing in the 4th century BC, provides additional details. Plutarch describes Spartans combing their hair before battle, singing paeans while advancing into combat. Modern historians classify this as warrior culture. But what specific techniques transformed 7-year-old boys into soldiers who could maintain phalanx formation while standing over the bodies of their dead brothers? How was psychological conditioning systematically produced? The agoge details come from sources written 400 years after Thermopylae. What operational manual existed at the time, and where did it go? Why did no other Greek city-state, with access to the same sources and similar resources, successfully replicate Spartan results? From the mountain pass of Thermopylae, we ride north to the Eurasian steppe, where another warrior culture achieved similar ratios not through heavy infantry, but through mobility no settled army could match. Number 2. Scythians. You are a Persian cavalry commander pursuing Scythian raiders across the steppe, 513 BC. The horizon is empty. The wells you passed yesterday were poisoned. The grass is burned for miles in every direction. Arrows fall from 200 yards. You cannot see the archers. You have been marching for 3 weeks. You have not seen the enemy. The year is 513 BC. Darius I, King of Kings, ruler of an empire stretching from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea, invaded Scythian territory north of the Black Sea. Herodotus, writing in book the 4th of his histories around 440 BC, documents the campaign. Darius crossed the Danube with an army Herodotus estimates at 700,000 men. Modern historians, including Renate Roll in The World of the Scythians, published in 1989, consider this number inflated. 50,000 to 100,000 is more plausible. The Persians marched into the steppe. The Scythians retreated. No battle occurred. No siege took place. The Scythians burned their own grasslands, poisoned their own wells, and withdrew deeper into territory the Persians could not supply. Herodotus describes the Scythians sending Darius a gift: a bird, a mouse, a frog, and 5 arrows. The meaning: unless you can fly like a bird, burrow like a mouse, or hide in water like a frog, our arrows will find you. After 3 months, Darius withdrew. No territory conquered. No tribute extracted. No Scythian force engaged. The mainstream explanation is logistically sound. The Scythians were nomadic, no cities to besiege, no fixed infrastructure to destroy. Their mobility allowed them to retreat faster than the Persians could advance. The composite bow, fired from horseback, gave them range advantage. The scorched earth strategy denied the Persians forage. But the Persians had cavalry. The Persians had composite bows. The Persians had conquered the Massagetae, another nomadic steppe confederation, 20 years earlier. The Persians understood nomadic warfare. Archaeological evidence from Kurgan burials and the Pazyryk tombs shows standardized military equipment, identical arrowheads, similar bow designs, consistent armor patterns across 2,000 miles of Scythian territory. Standardized equipment suggests centralized production or extensive trade networks. No Scythian administrative centers have been identified. No written records exist. How did coordination function across 2,000 miles without writing? Where are the workshops that produced standardized equipment? What organizational structures maintained quality control, and why have they left no archaeological trace? The Persians conquered an empire spanning 3,000 miles, but failed completely. Against the Scythians, what did the Scythians understand about steppe warfare that the Persians, with 20 years of experience fighting nomads, did not? From the steppe, we descend into the river valleys of Mesopotamia, where terror became not a tactic but an industrial process, documented in the empire's own records. Number 3. Assyrians. You are the governor of a rebellious city, 701 BC, watching the Assyrian siege engines approach. The battering rams are 3 stories tall. The siege towers move on wooden wheels. The smell of burning oil drifts from the walls. Bodies line the road leading to your gates impaled, arranged in rows. You have seen the inscriptions. You know what happens to cities that resist. The Neo-Assyrian Empire, 911 to 609 BC, conquered territory from the Persian Gulf to Egypt. The empire documented its methods in royal inscriptions carved into palace walls, written on clay tablets, displayed in public squares. These were not private records. They were propaganda. Ashurnasirpal II, who ruled from 883 to 859 BC, left an inscription at Nimrud. The translation, published in A. Kirk Grayson's Assyrian Rulers of the Early First Millennium BC in 1991, reads, I flayed the nobles who had rebelled, and I spread their skins out on the piles. Some I impaled on stakes upon the piles. The inscription continues for several paragraphs, describing additional techniques in clinical detail. Karen Radner, in Ancient Assyria, published in 2015, estimates that approximately 4.5 million people were forcibly deported over the 300-year span of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. The deportations were systematic. Entire populations were moved from conquered territories to other regions, breaking ethnic and political cohesion. The tactical innovations were equally systematic. The Assyrians fielded the first standing professional army in the ancient Near East. Iron weapons replaced bronze. Siege warfare became an engineering discipline. The mainstream explanation, articulated by Mark van de Meroep in A History of the Ancient Near East published in 2015, is straightforward. Terror prevented rebellion. Deportation prevented nationalist resistance. The professional army allowed rapid response to threats. The system worked because it was comprehensive. But other empires used terror. The Romans crucified rebels. The Mongols built pyramids of skulls. Both empires collapsed or fragmented within generations of their peak. The Assyrian system functioned for 3 centuries. The inscriptions describe Assyrian forces arriving at cities before rebellions were publicly declared. Sennacherib's annals mention those who plotted evil being identified and executed before uprisings could begin. No organizational documents describing this intelligence network have been recovered. How did the intelligence apparatus identify pre-rebellion plotting? What organizational structures coordinated information across an empire spanning 1,500 miles? The administrative archives from Nineveh were destroyed when the city fell in 612 BC. What operational knowledge was lost? Why did the system collapse so rapidly after 3 centuries of stability? From the river valleys, we return to the steppe, where another nomadic confederation achieved what the Scythians did but sustained it for 500 years and nearly destroyed China. Number 4. Xiongnu. You are a Han Dynasty border garrison commander, 166 BC, watching smoke signals from the north. The signals report movement. Dust rises on the horizon, a cloud that stretches from east to west as far as you can see. The sound reaches you before the riders' dewhorse hooves, thousands of them, moving in coordinated waves. Arrows begin falling like rain. They are not raiding, they are invading. 140,000 cavalry, moving as one. The Xiongnu Confederation, 209 BC to 93 AD, controlled the Eurasian steppe from the borders of Manchuria to the edges of Persia. Sima Qian, writing in his records of the Grand Historian around 109 BC, documents their military capabilities. At their peak, the Xiongnu could field 300,000 mounted archers. The territory they controlled extended over 2,000 miles. The tactical system was identical to the Scythians. Composite bows fired from horseback. Feigned retreats. Strategic mobility. The difference was scale and duration. The Scythians defeated one Persian invasion. The Xiongnu fought the Han dynasty for 3 centuries. The political structure is documented in Chinese sources. The supreme leader, the Xiongnu, commanded through a decimal military organization. Units of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Sarmatian describes the system in administrative detail, noting that the Xiongnu could mobilize their entire military force within days. In 166 BC, the Xiongnu launched their deepest raid into Han territory. 140,000 cavalry reached within 100 miles of Chang'an, the Han capital. The emperor fled. The raid withdrew before Han forces could respond. No battle occurred. The Han dynasty, under Emperor Wu, eventually adopted a strategy of annual tribute payments. Silk, grain, wine, and a Han princess sent to marry the Xiongnu. Nicolai Cosmo, in ancient China and its enemies published in 2002, documents these payments from Han administrative records. The tribute continued for over 60 years, from 198 BC to 133 BC. The mainstream explanation is logistically sound. The Xiongnu were nomadic, giving them mobility advantages. The Han dynasty was periodically weakened by internal conflicts. The tribute system was cheaper than continuous warfare. But the Xiongnu were non-literate. No Xiongnu written records exist. The decimal military organization requires systematic record-keeping to function at scale. Archaeological evidence from the Noinula burial mounds shows standardized military equipment across 2,000 miles. How were unit rosters maintained without writing? How were commanders appointed across 2,000 miles of territory? How did the Xiongnu communicate orders to forces operating hundreds of miles apart? No Xiongnu administrative centers have been identified where were the command structures. What happened to the organizational knowledge after 93 AD? From the eastern steppe, we ride west to the Sarmatians, where the pattern takes a disturbing turn. Entire societies organize for permanent warfare, including women in combat roles that archaeology has only recently confirmed. Number 5. Sarmatians. You are a Roman auxiliary cavalryman Dasha, 101 AD, facing a Sarmatian charge. The rider wears scale armor that covers torso and arms. The lance is couched under the arm, 12 feet long, the point aimed at your chest. The horse wears barding armor plates protecting its head and flanks. The rider's face is obscured by a conical helmet. The lance punches through your shield. You see the rider's face. It's a woman. The Sarmatians, 5th century BC to 4th century AD, were Iranian nomads related to the Scythians. They controlled the steppe north of the Black Sea. Herodotus, writing in book the 4th of his histories around 440 BC, describes their origin. The Amazons, a tribe of female warriors, crossed the Don River and married Scythian men. The resulting people became the Sarmatians. Herodotus notes that Sarmatian women rode horses, used bows, and fought in wars alongside men. For 2,000 years, scholars classified this as mythology. Greek literature was filled with Amazon stories. The consensus was clear: Amazons were fantasy. The archaeological evidence began accumulating in the 1990s. Excavations at Pokrovka, a cemetery complex in southern Russia, revealed warrior burials containing female skeletons. The skeletons were buried with weapons iron swords, bronze arrowheads, daggers. Some showed battle injuries, arrowheads embedded in bones, sword cuts marking skulls. Janine Davis-Kimball published her analysis in Warrior Women in 2002. The Pokrovka cemetery contained 7 female warrior burials. The women ranged in age from 16 to 30. The weapons were not ceremonial. The battle injuries were consistent with cavalry combat. The statistical analysis is documented in multiple archaeological reports published between 1995 and 2010. Approximately 20% of Sarmatian warrior burials contain female skeletons. The percentage is consistent across different cemetery sites, different time periods, different regions of Sarmatian territory. The mainstream explanation, revised after the archaeological discoveries, acknowledges that Sarmatian women participated in warfare. The participation is classified as a cultural practice specific to nomadic steppe societies. But the battle injuries are not consistent with occasional participation. The The women buried at Pokrovka show the same injury patterns as male warriors' arrow wounds, sword cuts, blunt trauma. The weapons are identical. The armor is identical. The burial practices are identical. How did the training system function if 20% of warriors were female? Where are the institutional structures that produce gender-integrated cavalry units? The battle injuries suggest women fought in the same formations as men, not separate units. How was this integrated into command structure? The pattern persisted for 9 centuries, then vanished completely. What happened to the knowledge? From the steppe, we cross into Europe, where another warrior culture achieved total societal mobilization, but instead of cavalry, they perfected infantry shock tactics that nearly destroyed Rome. Number 6. Gauls. You are a Roman legionary, Alesia, 52 BC, watching the Gallic relief army approach. The war horns sound first deep, resonant, designed to carry across miles. Then you see them. 240,000 warriors, moving across the plain in formations. Chariots on the flanks. Infantry in the center. Long swords flashing in the sun. They are not a mob. They are moving in coordinated columns. The Gauls controlled modern France, Belgium, northern Italy, and parts of Spain from the 5th century BC to the 1st century BC. They were not a unified state. They were a collection of tribes Arverni, Aedui, Helvetii, Nervii each, with its own territory and leadership. What unified them was language, religion, and a warrior culture that nearly destroyed Rome. In 387 BC, a Gallic army under the chieftain Brennus defeated a Roman force at the Battle of the Allia River. The Gauls marched on Rome. The city was captured and burned. Livy, writing in his History of Rome around 27 BC, documents the siege. The Romans eventually paid a ransom of 1,000 pounds of gold. When the Romans complained that the Gauls were using false weights, Brennus threw his sword onto the scales and said, "Vi victis, woe to the conquered." Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, 58 to 50 BC, are documented in his own account, Commentarii de Bello Gallico. Caesar describes multiple battles against Gallic armies numbering in the tens of thousands. At Gergovia, in 52 BC, the Arverni under Vercingetorix defeated Caesar's legions, inflicting 700 casualties. At Alesia later that year, the Gallic relief army numbered 240,000, according to Caesar's count. The tactical system is documented in Caesar's account and archaeological evidence. Gallic warriors used long swords, the spatha measuring 30 to 36 inches. They wore chainmail, an invention attributed to the Celts. Barry Cunliffe, in The Ancient Celts, published in 2018, analyses the material culture. The L18 style shows consistent metalworking techniques, decorative patterns, and weapon designs from modern France to the Czech Republic. The mainstream explanation classifies the Gauls as tribal warriors. Individual combat prowess, personal honor codes, decentralized leadership. The Roman sources emphasize Gallic ferocity and lack of discipline. But Caesar's own account contradicts the barbarian narrative. At Alesia, the Gallic relief army coordinated a simultaneous assault from outside the Roman siege lines, while Vercingetorix attacked from inside. The timing required communication and planning. Caesar describes Gallic forces using siege warfare techniques: towers, rams, tunnels. At Gergovia, the Gauls exploited Roman tactical errors with coordinated counterattacks. The Druids appear repeatedly in classical sources. Caesar describes them as judges, teachers, and advisors. They settled disputes between tribes. They educated the children of nobility. Strabo, writing around 20 AD, notes that Druids could stop battles by walking between opposing armies. The authority was recognized across tribal boundaries. No Druidic texts survive. The tradition was oral. Caesar states that Druids refused to write down their knowledge. When Rome conquered Gaul, the Druidic class was systematically suppressed. The Emperor Claudius banned Druidic practices in 54 AD. How was military coordination achieved across multiple tribes? The relief army at Alesia came from tribes across Gaul, some of whom had been enemies months earlier. What role did Druids play in military planning? The standardized weapons suggest institutional structures. Where were they? Why did oral tradition leave no recoverable knowledge after Roman suppression? From tribal confederations, we turn to the most sophisticated cavalry force in ancient history, a unit that conquered the known world in 13 years, and whose tactical innovations are still studied in military academies. Number 7. Macedonian Companion Cavalry. You are a Persian cavalry commander, Gaugamela, 331 BC, watching the Macedonian wedge formation approach. 1,800 cavalry arranged in a triangle, the point aimed directly at your position. The Sarissate 18-foot pikes are leveled. Dust rises behind them. The war cry reaches you before the impact. They are not charging your line. They are charging you, personally. The companion cavalry, 336 to 323 BC, was the elite unit of Alexander the Great's army. The force numbered approximately 1,800 at peak strength, recruited exclusively from Macedonian nobility. Arrian, writing in his Anabasis Alexandri around 150 AD, based on earlier sources, documents their role in every major battle. At the Granicus River in 334 BC, the companions charged uphill through a river against a Persian force of 40,000. At Issus in 333 BC, they broke through a Persian army estimated at 100,000. At Gaugamela in 331 BC, they punched through the center of Darius III's force and killed or captured the Persian command staff. The tactical innovation was the wedge formation. The companions formed a triangle, with Alexander at the point. The formation concentrated force at a single decisive location. Once through, the companions targeted enemy commanders, disrupting command and control. The system was combined arms. The Macedonian phalanx infantry armed with sarissas fixed the enemy line in place. The companions maneuvered to find a weak point. When the opening appeared, the wedge charged. The phalanx advanced. The enemy line collapsed. Modern military historians, including J.F.C. Fuller, in The Generalship of Alexander the Great, published in 1958, describe this as the Hammeran-Danvell tactic. The mainstream explanation attributes success to Alexander's tactical genius. Victor Davis Hanson, in Carnage and Culture, published in 2001, emphasizes superior Macedonian equipment. Plutarch, writing in his Life of Alexander around 100 AD, describes Alexander's personal courage. But Alexander won every battle he fought. So did his generals after his death. The Diardachi Wars, 322 to 275 BC, were fought between Alexander's successors: Ptolemy in Egypt, Seleucus in Persia, Antigonus in Asia Minor. These generals had served under Alexander, commanded portions of his army, learned his tactics. They fought each other for 40 years. The companion cavalry, or units modeled on it, remained effective throughout. At the Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC, 22 years after Alexander's death, Seleucus commanded cavalry forces, using Macedonian tactics. At the Battle of Raphia in 217 BC, over a century after Alexander, Ptolemaic cavalry still employed the wedge formation. The training system is documented in fragments. The companions were recruited from Macedonian nobility, beginning training in childhood. Specific drill manuals existed. Arrian mentions them, but none have survived. Where are the training manuals? How did effectiveness persist across multiple commanders, different theaters, changing political contexts? No other Hellenistic kingdom successfully replicated the companion cavalry the Seleucids tried, the Ptolemies tried. Both had access to Macedonian veterans and equipment. Why did replication fail? For Macedonian heavy cavalry, we turn to the opposite extreme light cavalry, so effective that Rome hired them for 400 years and never successfully replicated their capabilities. Number 8. Numidian cavalry. You are a Roman cavalry officer, Zama, 202 BC, pursuing Numidian skirmishers. The riders ahead have no saddles, no stirrups, only a simple cloth on the horse's back. They throw javelins at full gallop, the weapons arcing over their shoulders with impossible accuracy. Your horse is tiring. Theirs are not. They wheel left, impossibly fast, and you realize they are leading you away from the battle. You are being separated. The Numidian cavalry, 3rd century BC to 1st century AD, came from the region of modern Algeria and Tunisia. They fought for Carthage during the Punic Wars, then switched allegiance to Rome, then served as Roman auxiliaries for 4 centuries. Polybius, writing in his histories around 150 BC, documents their role in multiple battles. At the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, Numidian cavalry under King Massinissa defeated the Carthaginian cavalry on both flanks, then returned to attack Hannibal's infantry from the rear. The maneuver was decisive. Scipio Africanus won the battle and ended the Second Punic War. The tactical system was light cavalry. Numidian riders used javelins as their primary weapon, carrying multiple spears and throwing them at full gallop. They wore minimal armor. The horses were small, bred for stamina rather than size. The riders controlled them without saddles or stirrups. Saddles were not widely used in the ancient Mediterranean until the 4th century AD. Stirrups were not invented until the same period. Numidian cavalry operated for 6 centuries without either technology. Modern equestrian experts, including Anne Hyland in The Horse in the Ancient World, published in 2003, note that controlling a horse at combat speed without saddle or stirrups requires extraordinary balance and training. The mainstream explanation emphasizes natural horsemanship. North African tribes were pastoral, raising horses and cattle. Children learned to ride before they could walk. The cultural familiarity with horses translated into military capability. But Rome employed Numidian cavalry for 400 years. Roman military manuals, including Vegetius's Epitoma Rei Militaris, written around 390 AD, describe cavalry training in detail. Roman cavalry used saddles. Roman cavalry used spurs. Rome never successfully trained Roman citizens to replicate Numidian capabilities. At the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BC, Roman cavalry faced Parthian horse archers. The Parthians used saddles and composite bows. The Romans were defeated, losing 7 legions. Rome subsequently recruited more Numidian and other auxiliary cavalry rather than training Roman citizens. What training system produced the capability to control horses without saddles at combat speed? No Numidian training manuals survive. The archaeological evidence shows the horse's small, sturdy breeds but not the methods used to train riders. The capability was systematic, not exceptional. Thousands of Numidian cavalry served in Roman armies. Why was the skill reproducible within Numidian culture, but not transferable outside it? From cavalry that Rome employed but couldn't replicate, we turn to a warrior culture that appeared suddenly, destroyed multiple civilizations, and vanished, leaving almost no archaeological trace. Number 9. Cimmerians. You are a Phrygian guard, Gordium, 696 BC, watching riders emerge from morning fog. Horse archers, composite bows, moving in silence. No banners. No war cries. No warning. The city is burning. You never heard them enter. The Cimmerians appear in Assyrian royal inscriptions in 714 BC. Sargon II, king of Assyria, records a military encounter with Cimmeri, the Akkadian term for Cimmerians in the region north of Assyria. The inscription, translated in a Kirk Grayson's Assyrian Rulers of the early 1st millennium BC published in 1991, provides no context for who the Cimmerians were or where they came from. They appear fully formed as a military threat. In 696 BC, Cimmerian forces destroyed Gordium, capital of the Phrygian kingdom, in central Anatolia. Archaeological excavations at the site show a destruction layer dated to approximately 696 BC. The city was burned. The Phrygian kingdom collapsed. During the 660s BC, Cimmerian forces invaded Lydia in western Anatolia. Herodotus describes multiple raids. The Lydian king Geges was killed fighting them around 644 BC. Assyrian records from the reign of Ashurbanipal, 668 to 627 BC, document Cimmerian raids into Assyrian territory. Then they vanished. By 600 BC, Cimmerian references disappear from historical sources. No later mentions exist in Greek, Assyrian, or Persian records. The archaeological problem is the absence of material culture. Almost no artifacts have been definitively identified as Cimmerian. No burial sites. No settlements. No distinctive pottery, weapons, or metalwork. The mainstream explanation, articulated by scholars including Askold Ivanchik in Les Cimmerians au Praetorient published in 1993, is straightforward. The Cimmerians were nomadic raiders displaced by Scythian expansion. They migrated south, conducted raids for several generations, then were absorbed into other populations. Nomadic cultures leave minimal archaeological footprints, but Assyrian records document Cimmerian military operations for 80 years, from 714 BC to approximately 640 BC. 3 generations. Sustained campaigns against multiple kingdoms Urartu, Phrygia, Lydia, Assyria. How did a culture sustain operations across 80 years while leaving almost no archaeological trace? Where are the campsites, the burial grounds, the broken weapons? Scythian nomads left Kurgan burials across thousands of miles. Sarmatian nomads left distinctive artifacts. They appear in 714 BC, with no origin story. Where did they come from? They disappear by 600 BC, with no clear endpoint. Where did they go? From a culture that vanished, we end with one that survived and whose military traditions may have influenced Greek, Roman, and medieval European warfare in ways that mainstream history has not fully acknowledged. Number 10. Thracians. You are a Greek hoplite, Amphipolis, 422 BC, facing Thracian peltasts. Light infantry, moving faster than your formation can respond. Crescent shields, javelins arcing from 50 yards. They are not engaging your line. They are circling, throwing, withdrawing. Your formation slows to maintain cohesion. They accelerate. They are not fighting you. They are dismantling your formation. The Thracians occupied the region of modern Bulgaria, northern Greece, and European Turkey from approximately 2000 BC to the 1st century AD. They were not a unified state. They were a collection of tribes-odrisians, get-te, tribali, Bessi-sharing language, religious practices, and military traditions. What distinguished them was longevity. 2,000 years of documented military effectiveness. Herodotus, writing around 440 BC, describes Thracian warriors serving in Xerxes' invasion of Greece in 480 BC. Thucydides, writing around 400 BC, documents Thracian peltasts fighting for Athens during the Peloponnesian War. At Amphipolis in 422 BC, Thracian forces under Brasidas destroyed an Athenian hoplite army. Xenophon, writing in Anabasis around 370 BC, describes Thracian peltasts as the most effective light infantry he encountered. The peltast named after the pelt, a crescent-shaped shield carried javelins and a short sword. They wore minimal armor, prioritizing mobility. The tactical system was skirmishing. Throw javelins, withdraw before enemy could close. Repeat. The rhomphaia, a two-handed curved sword, appears in Thracian burials and Greek artwork from the 4th century BC onward. The weapon was approximately 3 feet long, designed to strike over or around shields. Plutarch, writing around 100 AD, describes Thracian gladiators using the rhomphaia in Roman arenas. Thracian warriors served as mercenaries for every major power in the Mediterranean. They fought for Persia against Greece. They fought for Athens against Sparta. They fought for Philip II and Alexander the Great. They fought for Rome during the Punic Wars and the Civil Wars. The mainstream explanation is straightforward. Thracian society was tribal and warlike. Military service was a path to wealth and status. The mercenary tradition provided economic opportunity and maintained military skills across generations. But Greek sources acknowledge Thracian tactical superiority. Xenophon describes Greek armies adopting peltast tactics after encountering Thracians. Thucydides notes that Athenian hoplites could not effectively counter Thracian skirmishers. These are not descriptions of primitive barbarians. You have just seen 10 examples of warrior cultures that achieved results conventional military logic cannot fully explain. Small forces defeating large armies. Nomadic confederations coordinating across thousands of miles without writing. Female warriors integrated into cavalry formations. Light infantry dismantling heavy infantry. Tactical systems that could not be replicated despite centuries of trying. How did 2,000-year military continuity function without centralized institutions? Why do Greek sources acknowledge Thracian tactical superiority if they were merely tribal barbarians? What institutional structures preserved military knowledge across 2 millennia, and where did they go when the culture was absorbed into the Roman Empire? If you found this analysis useful, subscribe for more deep dives into military history. Like if you learned something new, comment where you're watching from.